Ah, well, good morning. It's Sunday, it's freezing cold and raining, and I'm shivering, so it's Shivering Sunday. I have two cats now instead of just the one. Tora is not allowed outside because she isn't spayed, and Sweetie won't come inside no matter how much I beg and plead and offer delicacies and toys and such. And yet, I think the two of them will get along once Tora is spayed so she can go outside and meet Sweetie. Oh well. Anyway, I thought I'd try out YouTube this morning because I've had trouble with the internet connection. And it seems to be working out so far. Knock on wood, cross fingers and toes. I just got off of Skype. I had a 3-hour conversation and I didn't want to end it really, but I have other things to do. Uh, and Tora, the little indoor kitty, wouldn't leave me alone. She was pestering me the whole time. But now she's decided that, I don't know, something's more interesting. We were discussing literature and the Bible and ancient languages, and of course, Philip K. Dick. And the fact that everybody wants to know about my husband and nobody wants to know about me. Well, what can I say? Uh, let's see. Born in Culver City, a little town in between Los Angeles and Venice Beach. I played on the banks of the La Iona Creek before they concreted it. Uh, Hung around outside MGM Studios, but they had been closed for years. Their lot in Culver City. Um, Saw movies at the Maralta Theater, which is gone now. And a funny thing happened. The Watts riot was in August of 1965. In September, we moved to Anaheim, home of the mouse, we call it, the original Disneyland. And they had just started construction on Anaheim Stadium for the Angels, who had the nerve to call themselves California Angels, not Anaheim Angels, after the people of Anaheim voted in a new tax to pay for the brand new stadium for the Angels to play baseball. After years and years of controversy, they finally decided to call themselves the California Angels of Anaheim, but they really wanted to keep calling themselves Los Angeles Angels, as if Los Angeles were a good place. Los Angeles is a dumpster. It wasn't that great when I was young, and it's worse now. Well, it's been 10 years since I visited Los Angeles, and really all I saw was Union Station and when I was a child. But it's quite an experience going by bus from Union Station to Century City, passing through Koreatown, and then being confronted by these tall glass buildings. What is it with these architects who want to build everything out of glass? Ew. They're the ugliest things in the universe. And by the way, the answer to the question is 42. Yes, I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh, let's see. We've spent this week hoping and praying for the snow to thaw out, and it's done it. The snow was very deep, but now it's raining, and I want the snow back. Just not quite as deep. All right, Tim, my kitty won't come inside. Yes, she's feral. She was born in this house, but it was a vacant house at the time, so she never became socialized. I caught her and got her spayed by putting her kittens into the cage and waiting for her to go in to get her kittens and then shutting the door. She has never forgiven me for selling her babies. That's how she sees it. Is when they were old enough to be weaned, I got them new homes. Well, Sweetie used to have two brothers, Bob and Bobby. They were identical twins, and they were definitely half bobcat. Hence their names, Bob and Bobby. I couldn't tell them apart, so I just call them both Bob. But they've since, one Bob simply disappeared, and I more tame than Sweetie. She's just, after 10 years, yes, she's 10 years old. Once in a while I'm putting food in her dish, she'll kind of brush against my hand with her fur, but I am not allowed to reach out and touch her. And she learned to meow because she finally noticed about a year ago that when Blackie meowed, I pawed out food and treats and the good canned food. But when she first started to meow, she wasn't very good at it. Now she's pretty good at it. So if I don't notice her sitting outside waiting to be fed, she'll meow at me quite stridently. Tora, on the other hand, this rescue cat, cannot meow. She tries, but all that comes out is a squeak. And I'm pretty sure she's part bobcat, not half, but maybe a quarter. It's partly her conformation, her body, and it's partly her behavior. It isn't like most um, domestic breeds of cat. Sweetie, on the other hand, is definitely 100% domestic cat. She's just wild, wild like the wind. I think my plan to give up on 3 p.m. and try 11 a.m. is a good one. The internet is holding. It isn't freezing up. Well, this morning I had a long conversation with a scholar who's in Italy. So, of course, we did it by Skype. Fascinating stuff. Now, he knows Gematria, which I don't, but we were discussing some of the verses in Genesis. Uh, And he knows a lot more Hebrew than I ever did. Oh, oh, tired. I was up last night at the Christmas party for Crestline Lioness, and they had karaoke. I don't know why. We call it karaoke when it's spelled karaoke. Maybe for the same reason that the British called Myanmar Burma. We're just got to be different somehow. Oh, wow. So, anyway, we also talked about Phil's life, mostly his exegesis. I still haven't plowed through the published version, which is only about 300 pages. The actual manuscript is something like 10,000 pages. Oh, well. And of course, we got into Phil's obsession with the idea of a female aspect to the deity. Well, that's actually, um, in Jewish tradition, the Holy Spirit is female. Remember, hovered over the face of the deep. Oh, crud. Krudinsky. The darn thing keeps disconnecting when I finally get on a roll. The internet breaks down. Oh, the Shekinah, the glory, the shining, yes. Who says the Jews don't have a trinity? They just don't like to think of it that way. And many Christians don't either. It smacks of polytheism, many gods. But really, there are many ways in which the one God manifests, shows himself to us. And I never want to see the one where he comes down from the sky and literally battles against evil. That's too scary. You know, the war, the end times, all that. Riding on a white horse, I think. The people who wrote the scriptures wrote them in a certain time and place, in their own terms. That doesn't mean that the locusts in the book of Revelation are really helicopters. We tend to try to interpret the Bible in our own terms, but it wasn't written to predict the future. It was written to tell us what God says. Even the prophets, yes, sometimes they did predict the future, but that was not their job. Their job was to tell people what God said. And where did I put it this time? Well, anyway, last night at the Crestline Lioness Christmas party, they had karaoke. I sang the Christmas song, and everyone's going, "What's that?" But they knew what I meant when I said chestnuts roasting. First John chapter 5, verse 7. Where's my Bible? Uh, Okay, I'll go with Phil's Bible. The New English Bible with Apocrypha. Yes, I have his real Bible. That's how I know that the one on eBay is a forgery. 1 John chapter 5, verse 7. This doesn't have the little tabs that I put on the King James. Chapter 2 and 3, 4 and 5. Chapter, come on. Chapter 4. Where's chapter 5 start? Here we go. Verse 7. I'm going to start with 6. This is he who came with water and blood, Jesus Christ. He came not by water alone, but by water and blood. And there is the Spirit to bear witness, because the Spirit is truth. For there are 3 witnesses, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, and these 3 are in agreement. Now, I'm not. Phil did not write in books, and the one on eBay has a bunch of writing on it that's supposedly Phil's. I suspect that I can't prove anything, but I allege that Tim Powers must have written it because he was really broke and really needed a little money. But it doesn't look to me like Phil's handwriting at all. And his Bible was still there after he died. So anyway, it sounds kind of like a Trinity, but that is the New Testament. I'm talking about the Old. We have God in the face of the waters. Now, we never get 3 aspects of God all together, but what about Moses and the burning bush? The angel of the Lord, I don't know, maybe up in the sky. They're both talking. And the way the story is told, it sounds as if both of them are actually God. I am curious that one of them turns out to be God himself, and the other 2 angels go to Sodom to rescue Lot before the destruction. Sounds like a Trinity to me, but the 2 other angels aren't God. It's just kind of suggestive. And by the way, the spirit, the ruach, is the breath. So I believe that when God breathed life into Adam, God breathed a part of his own spirit into Adam. He created living animals and didn't breathe life into them, but he breathed into Adam. And the other animals were no less alive in the way we mean living than Adam. Tim doesn't have a dog in the fight. Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about the Trinity. 3 is a very magical number. And one of the conflicts between Christianity and paganism had to do with the fact that Christians believed in 3 aspects of one God, whereas pagan religions actually focused on four: the four winds, the four corners of the earth, the four cardinal points. And even today, when we know that the earth is round, whether it's flat or not, it's still round. We still think in terms of squares. We build our houses on square plots of land. We have tried to lay out our streets in patterns that are straight and square. We have in the center of town, we have this town square, and even if it happens to be a roundabout, a circle, we still call it the town square. Weird. We're a hodgepodge of many different traditions, and I really have a problem with the term Western civilization because our civilization isn't anything but Western. We got much of our culture from Egypt through Greece, both of which are in the Orient. The Orient used to mean Egypt. We've lost the true Western culture of the Celts and Gauls and Britons and Germani and Franks and all the tribes of Western Europe that Rome marched over. Oh, hi, Sleepy Dave. Hi, Tim. Oh, when God makes man, he doesn't say, and it was good. Well, at the end of the creation, everything's done. Does God say, and it was perfect? After all, they're in the Garden of Eden. No, he says it was good. It was not a perfect creation, it was good. No, God didn't create man in his fallen state. Of course not. But he gave us free will knowing that we might disobey him. Because to have a robot as your friend would be so boring. That's one reason why I'd rather have a real cat than a robot pet. She surprises me once in a while. Well, about 6 times a day, really. Robots can't do that. But Eden was perfect. But outside of Eden, the rest of the world was good. And it was our job to make the rest of the world like Eden, to perfect it. God gave us a job to do, and we haven't done it. Heaven is perfect, Eden is perfect, we are not, because we made a bad choice. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, and yet God sent them out into the world to till the soil and all that good stuff and overspread the earth. He still expected us to at least try to perfect the good world he had made for us. Well, Adam was made in God's image. What does that really mean? It doesn't mean that Adam looks like God or that Adam is all powerful like God. Think about it while I find a new pack of cigarettes. This one's empty. Come on, gimme. Almost there. Keep thinking. What is God's image? What does it mean? I'm beginning to suspect that the image has something to do with our DNA, and that when we fell, our DNA was corrupted. I'm not saying I can prove it, it's just a suspicion at this point. Ah, Sweetie's outside meowing. I've fed her twice. She won't come in. Maybe she's lonely maybe she wants Tora to go out and play with her, but Tora can't go out till she's spayed. Anyway, we were made in God's image. No other creature was. But the creation of Adam and Eve is described twice, once as a sort of overview and then again in more detail. Now, does it say that he made Adam out of nothing? The way he made the whole universe out of nothing? Nope. God formed the man out of the clay. So Adam is a creature of the earth. And yet, we human beings are very terribly, poorly adapted to life on this planet. At one time, I thought maybe we came from somewhere else, but now I think maybe it's because of the fall when we were damaged through our own poor choice to disobey God and eat the forbidden fruit. Scientists have managed to show that we are not the only animals that use tools. Uh, Birds will pick up twigs to poke into little holes to get out the insects that they want. We aren't the only animal that makes tools. Chimpanzees will choose small branches and pull off the leaves and make them just the right size and shape to get into a termite nest because they like to eat the termites. But we are the only animal that cannot survive without tools. Even the most primitive cultures make and use tools. Oh, poor sleepy Dave. Go play dolls with your daughter. That's more important. Michael has an interesting idea. Within God's image? If we were, well, in Hebrew, just like English, can have a number of different meanings. For example, I studied in school, My dishes are in the sink. I walk in faith sometimes. My dad worked in accounting and so forth. And I am in a bad mood. I really am leaning more and more toward the idea that in God's image has something to do with our genetic code. I'm sorry, Gerard, I missed Jonathan Pohl's live stream. I, I, I was at the Crestline Lioness Christmas party. Yeah, it's cold here too. It's about 48 Fahrenheit. But I kicked up the heater and I put a big pot of water on the stove to boil because when it's humid, it feels warmer. Now, more and more, they're finding that DNA is not the whole story. You've probably heard of epigenetics, these little things on the tail ends of our genes that determine whether a gene is actually expressed, and your body makes a protein that's coded for in the DNA. Yes, I might listen to the replay of the last poll position. I noticed that in the email I got, but not yet. My head's still full of all this other stuff, like the exegesis and the Bible. And let's see. Oh, I think the jury is out on the question of what the image of God means. But it is the verse on which people hang their opposition to abortion. My opposition is a bit more practical. I see the abortion clinics arising in poor neighborhoods, especially in neighborhoods where people have darker skin than mine. And after all, the founder, Margaret Sanger, wanted to reduce the number of brown babies in this world. Eugenics folks started here. The Nazis learned it from us. Many women were sterilized without being told or asked, never knowing it. Just suddenly they couldn't get pregnant. Uh, Native Americans, Mexicans, black women, mostly, some poor white women too. All in the name of improving the breed. Like we did such a good job with racehorses. So many of them will break a leg while they're in training. They aren't even racing because of eugenics by breeders of racehorses. They've bred them to weigh less, to be big but light, and they've bred them to have bones so thin that their legs break too easily, and then they have to be put down. A horse with a broken leg is nearly always a dead horse. Dogs, they've bred pugs and other short nosed dogs to have such flat faces that They're constantly ill because they can't breathe. They've inbred dogs and some cat breeds too, but mostly dogs, so much that they have terrible health problems. That's eugenics for you. And they think they can do better with the human race by decreasing the diversity of the gene pool. You end up with Dalmatians that are deaf, pugs that can't breathe, various dogs with the long pointy snouts that become vicious like Dobermans because their skull is too small for their brains. It's really horrible. If we can't get it right with a dog, what makes you think you can get it right with human beings? The Habsburgs proved that lie. The Habsburg rulers of Europe ended their family line ended because they married their cousins so many times that the last of them in Spain couldn't produce an heir. He couldn't get a woman pregnant. And they had that long pointy chin, and quite often they had hair lips and cleft palates. Do you know why the Spanish lisp? The Mexicans don't when they speak Spanish. But in Spain, the S is pronounced th, like TH, because the king had a lisp and nobody wanted to make fun of him, so they all started lisping. He had a lisp because he had a lip and a cleft palate. Oh, God, don't get me started on GMO food, Frankenfoods. You know, the Impossible Burger that's supposed to be like vegan and all that? Well, yeah, it's made with GMO soy and all kinds of chemicals to make it taste like meat. And I have the same attitude toward the Impossible Burger as I do toward frog's legs. If it tastes like chicken, I think I'll just eat the chicken. If the Impossible Burger tastes just like beef, I think I'll eat the beef. Yeah, Charles II of Spain. Good Spanish name, Charles, huh? They probably called him Carlos, but he was an Austrian. He was a Habsburg. They had rulers all over Europe till they died out from inbreeding. Now, it has been shown scientifically you can marry your first cousin and have perfectly normal children. But if you keep doing that generation after generation, you've got a problem. Whatever genetic flaws you have become magnified with each generation. It's a bad idea, but they didn't want to pollute their blood with commoners in their family tree. Maybe that's why the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas, was such an idiot. Uh, Queen Victoria had hemophilia, the bleeding disease. She carried the gene for it, but women rarely suffer from it. For a woman to actually be a bleeder, someone who bleeds very easily, a boy can will be a hemophiliac if one parent passes that gene on. And it happens to come from the X chromosome. Women have two X's, a man has an X and a Y. So when a boy is born, if he gets the X chromosome with the bleeding gene, the Y chromosome doesn't have a normal blood clotting gene to counteract it. Enough science for now. Although originally I was going to be either a veterinarian or a science writer, I've kind of given that up in favor of broader horizons like surrealism, like my novel, The Darkening of the Light, which is actually two people, a husband and wife, dreaming, and eventually they share their dreams. It's hard to explain. But they go through Dante's Inferno, they go through Mozart's The Magic Flute, but they end up in the real, quotes in real, I'd say surreal world. Oh, and there's a UFO and a raccoon and a chip implant. They want to put microchips in your brain so you don't have to learn anything, you just access the information on your chip. What a glorious opportunity for brainwashing. Who programs the chip? Who puts the information in it? Kind of like the internet on steroids. And you end up with all these crazy cults. People who claim they went to Mars and worked there for 20 years, and then they came home and the army regressed them so that 20 years didn't pass at all and they're still 20 years old. Now, I know that our military has things, technologies that we can only dream of. When we finally learn about a technology, it's at least 20 years old. But I'm not buying that. If you go to Mars for 20 years, you come back at age 40, they can't make you 20 years old again. If they could, you know, our politicians wouldn't look like the 90 years old that they are. Ruth Bader Ginsburg would never die. She'd be on the Supreme Court forever. That, folks, is ridiculous. And the earth isn't flat. There's a million reasons why it can't be. For one thing, every other planet is round like a ball. Why would Earth be any different? And the fact is, if it were flat, it would break apart. Study a little physics and you'll find out why. But even the ancient Greeks, thousands of years ago, figured out that the Earth was round just by measuring the land to lay out houses and castles and cities and stuff. Uh-oh. You had to bring up Kissinger. Thank you, Michael. I think Kissinger is immortal. I can't say Kissinger without thinking of that guy in Dr. Strangelove in the wheelchair. I don't know about Barbara Bush. It's a nice story, but I want to see evidence. And she had a DNA test. I wouldn't put it past these elites. They're always sleeping around. But if they happen to have a child with a commoner, they deny it. I forget who it was, but just recently some politician had to put up some child support because the prostitute he slept with demanded and got a DNA test. I'm on the prostitute side. Something really bad has to drive you to isn't an easy choice. Kissinger is still sucking air. Wow. How old is he now? About 12,000 years? Let's see. Kissinger. Born May 27, 1923, age 96. Born in Fürth, Germany. Oh, he's a short little guy, 5'9". Actually, that's about average for an American man born at the time he was born. Maybe a little taller than average. Oh, he studied at Harvard. That figures. All these big high muckety mucks go to the Ivy League schools, or they go to Oxford or Cambridge. I got a really good education at Chapman College before they sold out and became a university. They used to focus on teaching. But you know what the Bushes and Clintons and all these politicians got when they went to Yale or Harvard or, oh, what's the third one? I forget. Oh, the Cambridge in the US. Um, they got what we call the gentleman's C. They really didn't pass the course, but because they had important parents, the professor gave them a C. That's how both Bushes got through college. And yet, Daddy Bush ended up head of the CIA, then vice president, and then president. I think he was hoping to become president a little sooner, but the guy took a bullet for the president. He wasn't even Secret Service. And I will never believe that some lone nut killed John Kennedy because there was an attempt in Florida. There were two attempts in Chicago, and they finally got him in Dallas. So even if Oswald shot him or shot at him, there was still a conspiracy. And then, of course, Sirhan doesn't remember shooting Bobby Kennedy. Mind control, perhaps? I still wouldn't let him out. He's probably dangerous as a mind controlled patsy. And of course, the guy who was convicted of shooting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. probably didn't do it. The most he probably did was to transport the murder weapon in his car. King's children don't, and wife and children never believed that he did it. Religious and political leaders who were killed from the late 1950s into the 1970s. Marilyn Monroe supposedly accidentally overdosed on her sleeping pills. Dorothy Kilgallen, an amazing journalist who thought she knew who killed John Kennedy and was going to write it up in a book and publish it. Oh, gee, she mixed alcohol with her sleeping pills and accidentally died. Uh, I guess I better throw in Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. Rock stars who more. There's something about, I think it's age 27. Rock stars tend to die at age 27 because he was doing drugs, but something was covered up. Uh, Whenever someone who isn't one of them becomes important, they just have to put an end to that. They have to put a stop to anyone who isn't part of their little coterie having any importance in this world. They want all the wealth and all the power, and they only let us live as long as we can produce the wealth and power for them. The real reason they want to reduce the population is they're scared of us. They remember the French Revolution and the American Revolution and the Russian Revolution. As terrible as communism was, it wasn't all, fields of daisies under the Tsar. He was an ass. I really have a problem with the communists killing his children, but Nicholas deserved to be executed. Their thinking was that if there was another in the line of the Romanovs alive, they could inspire a new revolution to take back Russia for the monarchy. But Stalin killed more millions than Hitler ever got his hands on, but Stalin was our ally in World War II. In fact, if it hadn't been for the Soviet Union, we would have lost World War II. By forcing Eastern and Western, that split Hitler's forces, and the Russians dug in. For example, at Stalingrad, the women were in the factory making tanks for the men to drive out to the battle while the battle was going on. They simply didn't give up. Stalingrad, I called it Stalingrad because my brain ain't working. Stalingrad, famous battle. Russia did the same thing to Napoleon. Yeah, the British won at Waterloo, but Napoleon's forces were terribly defeated at Moscow because when it became apparent that the French were about to take Moscow, the people left and burned the city to the ground and said, "Here you go." And there were Napoleon's forces in the middle of winter in a burned out town with no food, no shelter, no nothing. And something quite similar happened to Hitler's forces in World War II. Russia kind of lost in World War I and the Crimean War, but nothing like the defeat of Germany in two world wars. The Kaiser was an idiot. Yeah, the Archduke was assassinated by a radical. And Therefore, Germany had to go to war. Well, actually, even back then, they wanted to expand. Germany was a baby country. It was only barely united as one country when World War I began. Prussia, with a P, not Russia, but Prussia, was basically what is today Western Poland. Um, Bavaria was separate from Prussia, and I can't think. There was Friesland, which was contended between the Netherlands and Germany for centuries. Austria, well, Hitler wasn't the only one who wanted to unite Austria with Germany. At some point in the 1800s, Germany united, but it had been a number of uh, little states ruled primarily by barons like Saxony, uh, and it came together under the Kaiser, which of course is German for Caesar, and the Russian Tsar, that's also a form of Caesar. They were all trying to be Romans. And even the Roman so called civilization was simply another um, incarnation of the Eastern, the Egyptian and Greek civilizations. The Romans even tried to copy Greek architecture and sculpture. And when they overran Europe, they took over places where you had tribes and clans, and they were like family, and they paved over what used to be a great civilization or a great culture. I don't like to say civilization because that just means you live in a city. That's what Rome did. They built straight roads of stone, built to last. Ah, the darn thing likes to disconnect me when I get on a roll. Rome is very regimented. That's how they won their battles. They had their foot soldiers, their infantry march in orderly columns. They were disciplined. And frankly, battle that happened in Germany, but those countries didn't exist at the time. The pagan, heathen hordes defeated a Roman legion, and the Roman soldiers turned and fled. The general, and I've forgotten the Roman guy's name. Anyway, he decimated his own troops. And what it is every 10th man was killed. You guys all line up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're dead. Not again. It keeps disconnecting me. Okay, so the next time they went into battle, it was made clear if you turn and run, you're dead. So you might as well try to fight and survive. And they overran the Gauls and eventually took over most of Europe and England. They never quite managed to take Scotland. They had to leave that to the British. They didn't really make that much of a mark on Ireland compared to what England did to the Irish. But somehow we're led to believe that the Romans had this great civilization and we should follow their um, moral standards and all. Do you know what a Romans were really brothels? weren't just for bathing. Don't get me started. Order and all these luxuries they had. Um, Fine clothing. They brought silks from the you know, and they did really cut down on street crime. But it's as they say even now, the best slaves are the ones who don't know that they're enslaved. Romans provided a pretty good life. Okay, you're a farmer, you got this much of a crop, this much of it belongs to Rome. Western civilization, yeah, they lack technology in many ways, influences. But there's something to be said for the Western tradition of Europe, which was very much like the Native Americans before the Europeans got here. Now, the life of a Native American wasn't necessarily very nice. It depends upon which tribe you're talking about. The Navajo, pretty good. The Cherokee, pretty good. The Lakota and Dakota, not so good. And the Iroquois, we see them as the exalted nobility among Eastern Native American tribes, but what their contemporary Native Americans said about them was they're a bunch of cannibals. They kill us and eat us. That doesn't sound too good to me. Doesn't sound civilized. Well, son of a gun. We're told a story. We aren't taught real history because of this white European male domination of academia. They just ref- Hi Oswald, don't worry, it'll be replayed. They just refuse to believe that the people who lived in that time and place could possibly know what really happened because, well, they walk around wearing a loincloth.